What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today we've got our Week 11 fantasy football wide receiver starts and sits for every single matchup, so make sure to tune in. If you enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear it in the comment section. Do you agree, disagree, along with any other questions you guys might have? We'll do our best to answer them all, but with that being said, let's get right into it. Before getting into our breakdown, I want to highlight the sponsor of today's video, OddsJam. OddsJam continues to be the place that I use for all of my sports betting research, from the NFL, NBA, MLB, to daily fantasy and everything in between. But don't just take my word for it. Let me show you firsthand all the amazing tools OddsJam has to offer. Starting with their positive EV tool, which identifies situations where a single sportsbook has mispriced their line compared to the rest of the market. They're basically willing to pay a lot more so that you bet with them compared to the other sportsbook. At the end of the day, you're getting the best odds, essentially a mathematical edge and guaranteed money in the long run. But also available is OddsJam's arbitrage tool, which shows situations where the market is so mispriced that you can bet on both sides and guarantee a risk-free return. OddsJam's calculators show you exactly how much you have to bet on the over and under and what the respective guaranteed risk-free return would be. There's also OddsJam's Sportsbook tool, which consolidates all available market info, over 200 sportsbooks, and provides updates in real time and allows you to see line movement. But my personal favorite is their Fantasy Optimizer tool, which is great for those using PrizePicks, Underdogs, or other daily fantasy sites, as you get to see discrepancies between all of these sportsbooks. Imagine, PrizePicks has a Patrick Mahomes line at 200.5 passing yards, and all other books like FanDuel and Underdog have this line at 230 passing yards. Well, getting the over 200.5 on PrizePicks would be an absolute steal. Guess what? OddsJam does that for you. And the good news is, if you sign up today and use our code PIGSKIN, check the link and promo code in the description of this video, you will get 25% off your first month. OddsJam also has a 7-day free trial, so you get to try before you buy. So don't waste any more time and sign up for OddsJam using our code PIGSKIN today. Now, we kick off Week 11 on Thursday with the Bengals at the Ravens. And when looking at the wide receivers here, I like the situation definitely more so than the running backs, where I think it's a bit dicey. But I have to imagine the wide receivers are really going to shine here, at least looking at it from the Bengals side of things. Now, Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd. We said Tyler Boyd last week without T. Higgins trending towards missing was going to be a smash play. That is exactly what happened. And again, T. Higgins not expected to play on the short turnaround. We think Tyler Boyd is going to be yet another solid start, mid to high end wide receiver 2. Jamar Chase in the wide receiver 1 category. For Baltimore, I'm only going with Zay Flowers here. The way I see this situation for the Baltimore Ravens playing out is Zay Flowers, who's pretty much been their top target, their top wide receiver all season long, is going to be the top wide receiver. Then it's going to be a lot of Mark Andrews. And then it's going to be some of the running backs, kind of plucking away on the ground, but neither of them getting massive carries. And then Lamar Jackson doing a lot of work on the ground as well. So to me, Zay Flowers is a better PPR play than in standard formats, which has kind of been the case all season long because he's been getting a big volume share. I think he's probably a mid-level wide receiver 2. And then I'm sitting the other wide receivers who've just been way too inconsistent, whether that's Odell, whether that's Rashad Bateman. Again, I think the hierarchy is Zay, Mark Andrews, and then there is pretty much a massive drop-off, and it goes to the rushers. But let's move on. We go to the Steelers and Brown next. So I'm focusing mainly on the top wide receivers here. For the Steelers, it's Deontay Johnson. For the Browns, it's Amari Cooper. And for Pittsburgh, I think obviously it was a disappointing day through the air last week, but that's just because the rushing attack had such a massive success. This is a different type of matchup versus the Browns. That defense up front is going to cause problems. I don't think they're going to have the same success on the ground, so I think they're going to have to do it through the air again. And Deontay Johnson is going to be that quick dump-off guy that's going to benefit in PPR formats. I think he's a solid mid-level wide receiver 2 in PPR scoring. For the Browns, the big news, obviously Deshaun Watson gone for the season, so P.J. Walker is going to be the guy at quarterback. Not too excited about this. We've seen Deshaun Watson mix games before. Obviously, this lowers the ceiling of Amari Cooper, but he's still the top wide receiver. What I think it does more than anything else is kind of, throw water on Elijah Moore and his upside and basically have him as a sit for the rest of the season. George Pickens, I think I've said this before. Look, the Steelers offensively with their quarterback situation, they don't have the upside to maintain two fantasy relevant wide receivers. That's why Pickens is a sit for me. Then Raiders at the Dolphins. I really like this game as far as wide receivers, as far as running backs, as far as everything. I think it's going to be a high-scoring affair. And for the Raiders, even if they don't put up a lot of points, they're going to put up a lot of passing attempts. So to me, that means Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers are going to be in good situations. I think Devontae Adams could have one of those huge Devontae Adams games, like 20+, 30+ points, finishes the top 5 wide receiver. And then Jacoby Myers, low to mid-level wide receiver 2. For Miami, Tyreek, Jalen Waddle. I really like both of them. I think wide receiver 1 for Tyreek, Jalen Waddle, high-end wide receiver 2. Then Bears at the Lions. I will start DJ Moore and maybe surprisingly Darnell Mooney. The reason why is because Justin Fields is expected to return. And I think DJ Moore is going to be the biggest beneficiary to this. But versus this Lions defense and also versus this Lions offense, you have to keep pace. You have to keep pace with a lot of points being scored. And we've seen the Lions defense, get exposed here and there. So I think we're going to see a lot of targets go the way of DJ Moore and Darnell Mooney. And, obviously with Justin Fields being back, that's a bit of an upgrade. So I'm betting on the volume here. I think Mooney is definitely a dart throw, but you could do worse. I think he's going to be, in that wide receiver 3, wide receiver 2 category. For the Lions, Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's been sensational the last month, really all season long. So to me, he's a top 10 wide receiver easily. And then afterwards, I think there's just such a huge mix of Laporta and the running backs that the other wide receivers, when St. Brown is healthy, aren't really factors. For that reason, only St. Brown is the start for Detroit. Titans, Jaguars next. We go to DeAndre Hopkins as a start. Disappointing performance last week, but we told you, look, the Titans are going to be up and down. Even though Will Levis had a huge coming out party in his first game, that's not going to translate to success for Hopkins every single week with multiple touchdowns. But what it does lead to is targets. And again, in PPR, targets is the name of the game. Now, I'm not saying Hopkins is a wide receiver 1. I didn't say he was a wide receiver, even a high-end wide receiver 2 after his huge 3-touchdown performance. He's a volatile, low-end wide receiver 2 at this point in time in PPR scoring. Outside of PPR, I'm not starting him. For the Jaguars, Christian Kirk. Calvin Ridley's been, no other way around it, very, very disappointing. Kirk actually on pace to better his season from last year where he was a top 15 wide receiver. I'll go start Christian Kirk. I think he's a high-end wide receiver 2. Calvin Ridley just a little bit too volatile right now. Then Chargers at the Packers. I'm only really interested in starting Keenan Allen now. You see the asterisk next to his name, dealing with a shoulder injury. I think he ends up playing, but if he doesn't, I think Jalen Guyton and Quinn Johnston become solid starts in his absence. I think, those targets are going to be divvied up between both of them. But if Keenan Allen is available, I think between Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, put in some Gerald Everett there and 2-3 targets to Johnston and Guyton versus this bad Packers team, that's going to be enough to get it done. For that reason, if Keenan Allen plays, I'm sitting Guyton and Johnston. And for the Green Bay, they're just way too inconsistent. 1 week it'll be Dobbs. Another week, maybe Christian Watson. There's a lot of just guys on this team. Jordan Love is inconsistent. I'm sitting all the Green Bay wide receivers. Then Cardinals at the Texans. So very disappointing performance from Marquise Brown here. No two ways about it last week. But I think that is, a fluke. I think he's still obviously number 1 wide receiver on this team. He was without Kyler Murray. He will remain the top wide receiver with Kyler Murray. I think this is a good bounce back opportunity. He's still the guy that I'm going with. I think he's a mid to high end wide receiver 2 in PPR formats. I'm sitting Rondale Moore. I'm sitting Michael Wilson. For Houston, if Nico Collins plays, I will start him. And then Tank Dell, the number 2 wide receiver. Interestingly enough, Nico Collins, not 100%, but neither is Noah Brown, who's also a little bit banged up. So if Collins plays, Tank Dell is my number 2. I would actually have Noah Brown, even though he's coming off a very good performance, as a sit. But again, that was when Collins missed his respective matchup last week. So only way Brown sneaks into, again, the starting lineup for me is if Nico Collins is unavailable. Then Cowboys at the Panthers. For Dallas, you might be shocked. How do you have Brandon Cooks, Michael Gallup as sits? Brandon Cooks just went for 30-plus points last week. And you might be saying, well, the Panthers are just as bad of a team as the Giants, but here's where I think it'll be different. So for the Cowboys, the Panthers are one of the worst offenses, one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL. This defense is going to go nuts versus the Panthers, I guarantee you. CeeDee Lamb will do his thing as a top 5 wide receiver again. And then Tony Pollard, I really do think this will be the huge Tony Pollard game. I truly, truly believe that. And for that reason, I think that the other guys aren't going to be as involved as they were versus the Giants. I've said this before. If there's a number 2 wide receiver for the Cowboys you want to take a chance on, it is Brandon Cooks. He has got the higher upside. We've seen that last week and at other points during the season, but I just think the game script here isn't a favorable one. He's not going to get 10-plus targets. Michael Gallup isn't going to have just 3-4 catches and one of them be a touchdown. So we're sitting those guys. For the Panthers, it's Adam Thielen. They're switching things up in terms of play calling again. I think Thielen is going to benefit from that and see some more targets, some more down the field targets. So to me, he is a high-end wide receiver 2, low-end wide receiver 1. Afterwards, Giants at the Commanders. I am only excited about Terry McLaurin here. It's as simple as that. I think that all the other wide receivers are, with Curtis Samuel back as well, just liabilities. Like, it's Terry McLaurin, it's tight ends, it's a little bit of Samuel, a little bit of Jahan, and then the rushers. Afterwards, it's not a lot to get excited about. So McLaurin is the top guy. It's a huge drop-off afterwards. I think McLaurin is a solid mid-level, high-end wide receiver 2. For the Giants, doesn't matter who the quarterback is. I've been saying it all season long. They don't have fantasy viable wide receivers. You're sitting all of the guys there. Then Bucks at the 49ers. I'll start Mike Evans. I'll start Chris Godwin. Evans, higher upside. Chris Godwin, though, solid floor in PPR scoring. Worst case, I think he'll be a low-end wide receiver 2. For the 49ers, I'll go with Brendan Ayuk. I still think he's the best wide receiver on that offense. I know Deebo Samuel had some success last week, rushing touchdown. I don't see that happening again. If you look at his wide receiver numbers, weren't all that spectacular. So I have Deebo Samuel as a sit. Ayuk, McCaffrey, George Kittle, those are going to be the guys involved, as has been the case all season long for the 49ers. Jets at Bills next. From the starts, I'll start with Garrett Wilson. As long as he plays, he's a little bit banged up right now. I will start him. He's just getting volume. So from that perspective, mid to high-end wide receiver 2 in PPR. For the Bills, Stephon Diggs, just had his worst game of the season by far. Under, 10 fantasy points in PPR, which is pretty wild. He's going to come back. He's going to bounce back. I think we're seeing a top 10 performance from him incoming. Then I'm sitting Gabe Davis. I just think it's going to be, too volatile with him. I think we've got Diggs, we've got Kincaid, and the only reason Gabe Davis had some success last week is because Diggs didn't have any at all. So for that reason, Davis is a sit. Seahawks at the Rams, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. They've been a solid duo. I think that can continue this week, both to mid to high-end wide receiver 2s. For the Rams, the great news here is Matthew Stafford is back, which means Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua both in that, wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 category. Jackson Smith-Njigba is a sit. Too many mouths to feed. So he's not going to be consistent right now. Then Vikings at the Broncos. If Justin Jefferson plays, you start him, obviously. He didn't last week. I think he's got a better chance to play this week. And if he plays, I'm sitting Jordan Addison. Look, with the situation at quarterback right now with the Vikings, they're not going to sustain multiple fantasy-relevant wide receivers. It's going to be Justin Jefferson by far and away, then TJ Hawkinson, and then everybody else, it's going to be a far cry away from that. So if Jefferson doesn't play, then yes, I'll start Jordan Addison, but otherwise, no. For the Broncos, I'll go with Courtland Sutton. He's been getting the volume. It's up and down again with this Broncos offense, hard to predict, and a lot of fluctuation, inconsistent. But if there's one guy I'm going to bet on, it's Courtland Sutton. I think he's a, obviously boomer bust, low to mid-level wide receiver 2, and then Jerry Jeudy just too inconsistent. Eagles, Chiefs. I'll start A.J. Brown. I'll start Devonta Smith. Great duo here. I think both can have solid performances. For the Chiefs, I'll start Rashee Rice. He's kind of been the top wide receiver for them all season long, but that's not saying much. That's still a lot of volatility, some touchdown dependence. So to me, he's a low-end wide receiver too. It's going to be a lot of Travis Kelce here, in my opinion. So other than that, the wide receivers for the Chiefs, it's slim picking. So to me, it's Rice and then fade everyone else. But with that, we wrap up our Week 11 fantasy football wide receiver starts and sits for every single matchup. If you guys enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear in the comment section. You agree, disagree, along with any other questions you guys might have. We'll do our best to answer them all. But in the meantime, we'll see you guys in future videos.